Okay, folks, my guest today on 947 Let's Chat is he holds a master's of science in clinical psychology. He's also a certified life coach and a clinical hypnotherapist. Now, that is the one that I am really interested in. I'm interested in all the rest, but that is something that is obviously to me, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, unique to Barbados. I don't know of any folks who do that. So to me, this is going to be a fairly exciting chat. Let me welcome Krisnan Hurdle to the 947 studios. How are you doing, Krisnan?
Good day, Joanne, and good day, listeners. I'm doing well.
Oh, great.
I'm excited to have this interview.
Wonderful. Well, I don't do interviews, I do chat. So just imagine if we were somewhere with a drink. I don't know if you drink, but something. It could be a cool glass of lemonade.
or water.
Or water. Water will work as well. Water will work as well. So I've been following you on Instagram and so on, and I saw this young man, and I said, I was having a discussion with my husband, and I said, this young man seems very interesting, because that is what I do. I go through Instagram, I go through Facebook and so on, and the other platforms, and I try to find interesting Barbadians that I can have a chat with. And I saw you, and I said, this is someone I like. And he said, but you know him. You've met him already down at the club. And I was like, yeah, he said, yes. And he sang your praises when it came to cricket. So I even want to go there. Right. So Krisnan, tell us a little bit about your early years. Where are you from in Barbados, family names, that kind of story. Start us there.
I grew up in St. George. I actually had my first 3 years in St. Philip before my parents moved to St. George. And when I was in St. Philip up to 3, I remember finding birds in their nests and pulling them down out to the nest and playing with them and doing surgeries. But I moved to St. George at 3, and I'm from the Mount, St. George. I went to school at Erdeston Primary and had some good days there, eating tambourines on the evening, picking tambourines from the tambourine tree, and honing my cricket skills. We would play skying or we play cricket on the pasture. And that's where I really started to develop a liking for cricket.
Was there anybody at school at that time, any teachers, anyone that would have said, you look like you could be the next, one of the next West Indies star, or if not in sport, in academics, anyone that you really looked up to as a teacher or an influencer in your community, that you remember something that they said that you've kept with you throughout your life?
Well, I was named after a cricketer who was from India, and my mother liked his name. So she named me Krisnan without the H. And my dad liked cricket, so he always encouraged me. I used to walk around with rulers and my socks as cricket pads. But I remember when the first week of cricket practice started, I think I was probably in class 2. Rudolph Allen, who is now Dr. Rudolph Allen, he's the head of the sports program at University of West Indies, Cave-Hill. He was our PE teacher, games teacher then. And then Telson Payne was the first cricket coach that actually coached us how to defend and how to drive the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So it started probably around at least formal cricket practice started around age 7 or 8. And I guess they developed a liking for me. I was always athletic. So even though I had a particular interest in cricket, I was valedictorian a few times at school. But then when that Friday morning cricket practice started, and I was permitted to be one of the few who got to leave class on Friday morning school cricket practice, that's where I recognized that I was a little more talented than some others. and I guess the encouragement from Mr. Allen and Mr. Payne, Telson Payne, would have spurred me on to try to make something of my talent.
But is that still at primary, or is that into secondary school as well?
Well, that's at primary.
Mhm.
I would have been practicing with Friday morning cricket practice, and then I finally got an opportunity to play for the school. I think my very first cricket match was at Bay Primary, and it was out of season match. But I just remember the novelty of going to the school and being able to be playing cricket while everybody's in class. But eventually, I was the most outstanding batsman when I was in class 3. And then in class 4, I led Erdiston to their first championship, Erdiston Primary School, to the first championship. And from there, I went on to be the National Sports Council's captain. They began with my group, they began a tour to Trinidad, an exchange tour. And then they also did this cricket tournament in St. Kitts. I think they were about coming on to the end, maybe about 3 or 4 other territories came. So I was in the first batch of guys. With me were Chris Jordan, Carlos Brathwaite, Ashley Nurse, Jonathan Carter. And Jonathan was the first captain, and then I replaced him very quickly. So I became the captain for the tour to England and a return tour to Trinidad.
So you talk about being a batsman, but did you also bowl? Was that also part of your super strengths?
Yeah, I bowled up until class 4. When I got to secondary school and the pitch increased in length, then I decided to call that a day. But I was a little medium pacer back then.
Okay. But so where did you go to secondary school?
So I moved on to Comamere, and I remember in my first year at Comamere, and that first year was the first exchange match between Trinidad and Barbados. Trinidad came here for the first tour, and we returned the next year when I was in second form. We returned to Trinidad. By the way, in the Trinidad team was Darren Bravo. I think Narain was also in that team, but it slips me. I think he played though. But I would have missed some of the local under 13 cricket to play in that national team. And then when I was in second form, I helped Comamere to win their under 13 tournament, the under 13 competition. So I moved on to Comamere under Roddy Eswick. He was in his first year when I entered school. He was in his first year at Comamere. Well, moving into his second year, and I actually played under 15 cricket in the summer before I entered school.
But there are those, Krisnan, who would say that your name was in there. You were you call a lot of names, but your name was right there at the top of that list as one that would go forward with a cricketing career. What made you move away from cricket?
I got a back injury when I was in 3rd into 4th form, and it prevailed until I couldn't play cricket. I didn't play cricket for 3 years. So I didn't play cricket 4th form, 5th form, or 5th form's lower 6 and upper 6. An entire 3 years. I returned. Roddy Eswick told me, you got to play something before you leave school. In the very last term of upper 6, I decided to try out again because I had a fairly serious back injury. I had a fracture in vertebrae of my spine. So the doctor would have told me that I might not be able to run again. I probably most likely would not have been able to play cricket again. But I tried out and it was good enough. It was holding up. And I was able to play. Comamere had a tour to England, and I was able to make that tour because I didn't play cricket for 3 years, but I still had my batting skill, of course. And so I returned to cricket continued with BCL, Barbados Cricket League. I later moved on to Carrollton. But then I, working in the hotel industry, I decided it was taking a toll on me. And having worked there for 3, 4 years, I had to call it quits because I was getting a bit injury prone after working long hours in the hotel industry. I was a waiter, and I decided to resign or retire from cricket in 2015.
Okay. Now
Before
you,
that, I'd made
yeah.
Barbados trials. I went to Barbados trials in 2012, and I also barely missed out trials in 2013 for the senior team.
Right. So that would have been for the love of cricket. But then you alluded then to going into the hospitality area. Coming out of school, coming out of Combermere, what was the plan? Did you have a plan, or was it that you got an opportunity to then work in hospitality?
So coming out of Combermere, I had dreamt of being a sports psychologist. Just wanted to deal with sports. If I couldn't play, I wanted to be involved in some way. So sports psychology was on my mind. However, I didn't think that I would be able to pursue psychology for financial reasons. I wasn't necessarily a grade A student, but I was able to complete my bachelor's. And it was a good thing too, because in my final semester, I was about to quit. I was about to give up. And I had two friends who encouraged me to continue. If I had not completed my bachelor's, I would not have been able um, to qualify for doing a master's. So that was a blessing in disguise. But I got into the hotel industry maybe 2 years after leaving school. Well, while I was at university, well, when I was about to leave university, I was given an opportunity to work part-time, which led to full-time. I was one of the always decent performers. So I was one of the group. Well, I came in a group of we call it banquets
Yes.
for big, large events. And I was one of the standouts. So they assigned me to a restaurant. I was at Sandalane Hotel. They assigned me to a restaurant, and I went off full time. I was there for 4 years, and after some long hours, I decided also to move on from that to change my career.
Did
That,
you stay as a waiter, or did you move on to other things in banquets?
oh no, I stayed as a waiter, working in their fine dining, like a Jew restaurant. So it was late, long hours, late nights, and then sometimes on weekends also splitting between working and playing cricket. It was very difficult because in the cricket season, I usually do split shifts where I would work morning and return in the evening and play cricket during the day. So that
Wow.
was where it took a toll on me. And then I wasn't able to practice. They didn't give me time. They gave me time for playing on the weekends, but they didn't give me time for practicing.
Okay. So you did hospitality for 4 years. Where did you go to
Mhm.
next?
So I decided to change to establish a real career. I didn't think I thought waitering was just a transition, just something to make some money on the side.
Yes.
Um, but I really wanted to pursue a real career path, and I someone introduced me to Tony Olton, and he does leadership training, and he's the one responsible for emotional intelligence EQ Barbados. And I shadowed with him. He allowed me to come on working with him as a mentee. I did that for about a year. Well, I did that for 2 years on the side in my downtime while I was still in the hotel. But then I went on full time with a year with him after I left. And in 2015, I decided to leave cricket. I decided to leave my day job, which was kind of voluntary. And I also left Sandy Lane. I made a decision to leave all three one time. And I went on to do leadership training with Tony, and I eventually did my certification in life coaching. And then I went on to other things, which we'll probably talk about shortly.
Yes. Life coaching, though, because it's not many people, Krisnan, who can just get up, or I'm sure you thought about it, but to leave all three at one time. Most people would do it in stages. So the strength of mind was your training that or what brought you to do that, to decide at, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it bang one time and move on? What kind of mental strength does one have, or would you say that you have, that you were able to take that decision?
Well, I I after some time, there's the stresses of working in a very high demand hospitality environment. And I, for a while, had decided, maybe a year and a half before that, that I was going to move on. But I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And having built up my financial base at that time, I thought that I was able to go and study, which was, well, I moved on with Tony Olton, but I did some courses. I did supervisory management. I did a leadership course. I did my CVQ in management. So I thought that I would have enough savings to study and perhaps go on to work with him or to start my own business. And so I decided peaceably. I thought in my mind, you know what? Cricket seems injury prone. I don't seem to be making the strides I want to make. Um, the the job, which was working in a student organization voluntarily, semi-voluntarily, it wasn't making a lot of money, and I felt like it was also time to move on from there. And finally, working in the hotel industry was stressful, so I was able to peaceably let them go. And people were wondering, "What are you doing with your life, Krisnan?" And I decided, you know what, it's time to move on. I wouldn't necessarily encourage people to leave their money-making ventures or their stable source of income to go try to start a business. That's probably not advisable. But things have, I've gone back, I've done a short stint back in the hotel industry, but generally business has grown over the last, well, before I went overseas to do my master's, business has grown. So is holding its own and is growing.
Right. And that brings us now to your business. At what stage, after working with Tony, at what stage then did you start this business? And what does the business entail?
So I had been with Tony maybe a year before he went full time, working with him part time, Tony Olton. And I then worked with him for 6 months full time, and then another 6 months when I was about to go overseas to study. So it was almost full time, but not quite full time. And I went overseas. So I went overseas to do hypnotherapy, and that was 3 months overseas. And then I came back and started business. And it was rough at the beginning. I opened a full-time office, and some days and weeks I was just sitting down, twiddling my thumbs, making phone calls, looking for people to come to the door. Probably not the best business strategy, I would admit, but I was pleasantly surprised when I thought that doctors were going to be the most resistant, but doctors have actually been my biggest referral. And doctors, I've built a very good relationship with doctors. I get referrals for anxiety, stress management, phobias, panic attacks. More recent times, I've been working with a number of mothers for reducing pain during childbirth. So that is a big part of my work. And I'm looking to also go into sports, mental conditioning for sports.
So you will come full circle and get back into what you love, but
Absolutely.
in another way. But I've had this discussion. I do a program with Janelle Chase Mears, and we talk about rethinking mental health and, the opening of the door for Barbadians thinking that mental health is important enough that you should feel as though if you are under any stress or strain, that you don't have to feel embarrassed or hesitant about finding some professional who can help you. How was that for you? You said that some days you would twiddle your thumbs, but at what stage was it that you were able, you said there were referrals, but do you find that in our society today, more people are willing to come and sit down and have a conversation with a total stranger?
Well, definitely there's a great amount of stigma towards mental health, especially among males, and that's a demographic I want to do a lot more work with. But the advent of COVID and the repercussions of COVID have opened lots of Pandora's boxes and lots of doors, and there's been a greater recognition for the stresses of mental health and the effects of struggling to deal with our environment. And there's been an increase since the lockdown in February. There's been an increase in persons coming forward. Of course, males or men tend to be more resistant, more hesitant. But I've been getting some breakthroughs where men are concerned, and I think that men like to talk to men. I think most of our mental health practitioners are women. Most counselors, social workers, psychologists are women. And I think there's the opportunity now to have a man who has been through work, has engaged with men through sports and other arenas and music. I also had some time in music. And it has been, there have been reports from one of my clients who said, it's good to be able to find a man to talk to.
Okay. Well, let's go now to the one that I'm excited about, the hypnotherapy. Yes, we know clinical psychology, we know life coach. We have quite a few of them on the island who will, help you through your journey and give you ways in which you can assert yourself and little things like that. But hypnotherapy, are there any other hypnotherapists besides yourself on this island that you?
I've heard that there are maybe about 2 others. I don't see as much activity from them, but I've definitely been putting myself out there. There have been persons who have recommended that I not push the word hypnotherapy, I use words like mental conditioning or visualization. And for some, it has been a turnoff.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
I have continued to push it. I've continued to push it because there are people who are interested. There are people who I meet oftentimes who say, ever so often, who say, I was wondering if there was one of you around, and it's good to finally know there's somebody in Barbados who does this. And so I have been bold about it. Some people, some of my friends, some of my colleagues say, you have been a pioneer. I really have, because a lot of my other hypnotherapists, well, some of the other practitioners, they don't really seem to push it as I do. So I've really been pushing it hard. And again, having the confidence of doctors, medical practitioners, having that referral base from doctors have been a real encouragement, but it's also added to my credibility to realize, hey, they're seeing results and they're confident to have their patient being taken care of by a hypnotherapist. And as I said, I've worked a lot with anxiety, panic attacks, phobias, stress management, and as I mentioned more recently, women with childbirth, reducing pain for childbirth. I should also say, I was recently trained in a technique. I was trained by a doctor who operates from Spain. He's a registered surgeon. He does surgeries without anesthesia, and I've been trained in his approach, his method. And so I'll be looking to work alongside any doctors who are willing to have clients do local operations, local surgeries, local anesthesia for small surgeries without anesthesia. That's what I'll be looking to do.
Okay. The question will be asked, what are the benefits, as opposed to just coming and sitting and talking to you about my life one-on-one? What are the added benefits to hypnotherapy?
There is the opportunity, the ability to directly impact and train, and I say speak to the subconscious mind. In the process of hypnotherapy, we are engaging with the subconscious mind, where a lot of our, call them programs, our beliefs, our thoughts can be reframed, can be retrained, can be re-educated. And hypnotherapy goes a little deeper than some of the talk therapies, where we look to tell the subconscious what we want it to do, how to replace the old habits or the old way of doing things. And as I said, this works for subconscious things like habits, anxieties, and even pain management.
Okay. Now I know that with this kind of work, there has to be um, love of people and that kind of thing. Would you say that that is the type of person that Krisnan Hurdle is? Someone who wants to really see, or maybe I don't let me put words in your mouth. What kind of person would you say Krisnan Hurdle is that it enables you to do this kind of work?
So something that I probably overlooked earlier is that in that process, while I was in the hotel industry, I came to a place where I decided to make some changes in my life. So I started a personal development journey. That started, I remember it very well, in 2013. And one of the things I recognize is that I used to tolerate people, but I didn't really I wasn't as warm as I wanted to be. I didn't used to enjoy people as I wanted to. I knew other people was and I wanted to. So I started a process of becoming more comfortable with myself and finding things about life that I enjoy and things about people that I can relate to. And so one of the things about me now is that I love people a lot more. I'm a lot more sociable. My friends have noticed it. I am a lot more warm, a lot more open, a lot more transparent. I used to struggle to relate personal stories and personal issues with strangers. And now I'm more of an open book than I was before. So I've definitely developed an openness and a love and appreciation for people.
And of course, that translates then to having to help people on a day-to-day basis. Because if you want them to do the same, people tend to relate better when they know that the person they're talking to, they also have a story. They
Yeah.
also have, yes, that kind of a relationship. My concern is always children. And while we have, you know, the facility and ways in which adults can come and sit down and have. Through this pandemic, children are suffering greatly with all that is happening around them. And do you have a place in your business for children and looking at the things that affect them, especially now in 2021?
I bring with me from working in the student organization, I bring with me experience working predominantly with teens. I used to work with secondary schools, and I am a lot more comfortable working with that age group than I am with the younger ones. But I definitely do enjoy working with children. I have done a bit of work. I've worked with children for managing anxiety for exams. But of course, with COVID, there's the depression, there's the anxieties which have developed. There's also abuse. And I've worked with quite a few in my internship with the psychiatric hospital. So I've gained the skills, I've developed some skills, I've gained some experiences which have empowered me and prepared me to work with children. I definitely say that I prefer the teenage to young adult group, but I am also capable of working with younger ones as well. Working with children it calls for a special type of patience, but it also calls for creativity. And one of the challenges is that adults oftentimes can, they're the ones in charge. They're the ones making the decisions. But children may not be as vocal about how they feel or how they're being impacted. And I think many times children, and I used to get it with my peers when I was at that age, that stage of life, children and teenagers think, parents don't understand me. They're not taking time to listen. And most of the times I've worked with about 5 I can think of off the top of my head who just needed somebody to talk to and the problem went away. And just having that person who would listen to them made a big difference.
With regard to our nation now, and doing this work, and you've said that you're seeing more people now of all age groups and so on. With regard to our nation, any advice that you could give us generally that we can help us to look towards starting the discussion, starting to look more at mental health and take it seriously, not just think, oh, he mad or she mad, that kind of thing. Is there
I think
anything in general, tips or anything in general that you would like to say to the populace that we need to look more and respect more each other's, mental ability?
first of all, I think any and every opportunity to discuss mental health and the related issues, whether it's stress, anxiety, depression, insomnia, abuse, etc., domestic abuse, etc. The stresses of having struggles of work-life balance from working from home, etc. I think every opportunity to address those on the public forum, in the public domain, should be encouraged. And I meet people who every day, whether on social media, personal friends or clients, who say, I have a story to tell, or there are things that have been on my mind and they've been keeping it to themselves. And I encourage people to be a little bit more open where possible. Of course, privacy is something that we'd want to maintain, but where you feel that there's something that you're going through that maybe you're not alone. Of course, suicide is a big issue here in recent times. Where you feel alone, or you're wondering if you're alone, find that person that you can talk to. If you care to post about it on social media, or come speak to me, and let's begin a discussion. Whether you want someone to work with, a professional to work with, or you'd like to have public discussions on issues related to mental health, I definitely welcome the opportunity, and I'm especially open and delighted when men can talk about their issues.
All right, as we wrap it up, you say, come talk to me, tell us where we can find you, so that we can start the discussion with someone who is trained and someone who will take the time to help us through the journey. So where do we find you?
So I can be found on social media. I have my personal account, go by my name, Krisnan Hurdle. You can also find me at Insight Consulting, Facebook and Instagram, Insight Consulting. But my number is, I give it away freely, 247-6899. Or you can email insightconsultingbb@gmail.com. You can find me there, leave me a message, and let's begin the conversation.
Oh, yeah. And this is, I want to thank you very much for taking the time for us to have a conversation. And my special guest has been Krisnan Hurdle. And as he says here, from reading his bio, special interest in helping people better cope and recover from trauma, stress, and anxiety. And he has developed a holistic stress management protocol, which receives many referrals. And today, you got a chance to meet Krisnan, learn a little bit more about him, and perhaps having that chat with him could change your life. You never know. Krisnan, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Joanne. And I really enjoyed this time. I look forward to further opportunities. This was nice.